Good evening. Welcome to Live United. Living United, where we have an opportunity to share, to learn, to think about how we can come together as citizens to really contribute to our communities out there, to make a difference in the lives of people. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming Mary Brunner from Southwest Region Planning Commission and Linda Rubin from Healthy Monadnock. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Kelly.
It's great to have you here. You know, Healthy Monadnock and Southwest Region Planning have been involved in some tremendous initiatives that are really creating action and healthy lifestyles for people out in the Monadnock region. And today we're going to be talking about safe streets and some of the work that's going on through Healthy Monadnock and this joint effort that really contributes to walking, riding, and other good things out there. So Linda, can you start by sharing with us a little bit about Healthy Monadnock for those viewers who may not be familiar with it, and we hope that everyone already is.
Right.
But share with us that, and then how you really got involved in these, I'm going to call them transportation initiatives, because really that's what they are. It's just thinking about transportation in a different way.
Sure. So a little bit of background on Healthy Monadnock. Back in 2007, Chester Medical Center, Dartmouth, Hitchcock, Keene, some folks that worked in the community health department had this big idea of becoming the healthiest community in the nation, and then started talking to the Council for a Healthy Community, which has been a group of folks representing different sectors in the region and different geographic towns in the city of Keene and so on, and they've been coming together to address public health issues since 1994. So this idea of becoming the healthiest community in the nation was sort of brought to the council, and they started grappling with, well, what did we mean by becoming the healthiest? What was the definition of health, and what would the targets be that we set as a community, and then how would we engage the community in actually doing something? And so it took a couple of years to, determine what did we mean by health, and the definition of that ended up being very, very broad. So we included, things around educational attainment, so the high school dropout rate, and folks that were attending post-secondary schools, and we also looked at poverty rates, child poverty rate, adult poverty rate. So trying to get a sense of what were those real underlying causes of why people weren't as healthy as they could be. So we came up with a number of indicators that council helped to create targets for all 27 indicators that we use to measure the health of the community. And then we started engaging people in what would we actually do. And the council created some guiding principles for the action planning. They said, things like, well, whatever we do, it better affect change at a population level. So it better impact large groups of people rather than if we tried to improve health sort of one individual at a time, we need 100 years or so to get there. So, that the strategies would really be focused on improving the health of populations. And so once that was sort of set, it was like, okay, well, we want to prevent chronic disease. We want to help people live a high quality life for as long as they're, help them to reach their full health potential. We convened the community over a number of action planning sessions to focus in on what were the best practices around health improvement in various goals that the community had identified as being here's the direction that we needed to take as a community. So, some of the things would not be a surprise to people: improving healthy eating, improving active living. But then we also had some goals around increasing educational attainment, and improving income and increasing jobs. Because when you really get down to it, it's those big picture issues. Your health outcomes are directly correlated with your income and your education level. So we have strategies in all those various goals.
And we're going to have some future shows where we'll really have an opportunity to dig in a little bit on some of these different issues that are being addressed. Mary, can you talk about how Southwest Region Planning is involved and what has connected you and the organization together with this collaborative effort on the part of the community to really address, I mentioned transportation, but really our streets?
Yeah, so Healthy Monadnock received a grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention called Partnerships to Improve Community Health. I believe you were one of 26 applications that were accepted, correct?
I think it was 30. But
30, okay. Well, either way, it's a huge honor that our region received this, and it's a three-pronged approach to improving health. One is access to healthy foods, tobacco cessation, and the third one is increasing access to physical activity opportunities. And one of the ways to improve someone's access to physical activity opportunities is to improve the built environment that they live in, to make it easy and safe to, walk to the store, take a walk after work, ride your bike to school, by having the infrastructure in place that promotes healthy, physical activity outside, that has been shown to increase people's the number of minutes that they spend walking and biking every day. And so that's the part that we're working on with this grant. And
so you mentioned infrastructure, so I imagine that's part of the reason you're involved. But Linda or Mary, what's the when you say infrastructure, what do you mean? Let's share with the public. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, there's the obvious things like having a wide sidewalk that's separated from the roadway either by a green buffer strip or a curb, so it's vertically separated. That helps people feel safer, like they're not right next to traffic. Having crosswalks that are very visible so that motorists, as they're approaching them, know to look for pedestrians. And other things that you might not think about but have a huge impact, like having street trees. That really improves the walkability of an area. And by walkability, I mean it's kind of a vague term, but they have walkability checklists you go through and you talk about how comfortable and how safe. And a huge part of that is having trees and other things that that provide shade and also provide separation from traffic and just make pedestrians feel safer and less exposed. So it encompasses a wide variety of things. And then there's some of the more innovative types of infrastructure treatments, such as creating a bike lane, and especially protected bike lanes that have a buffer between the bike lane and traffic. So there's a lot of physical infrastructure encompasses a lot of different treatments that you can consider for a roadway. Yeah.
So Linda, as we gain this physical infrastructure in the area, what's the impact? What difference does it make in the lives of our citizens?
Yes. Well, we know that as far as chronic disease, there's many contributors to that. And there's probably not a whole lot that we can do about the genetic factors that, influence health. But pretty much the remaining 80% of those factors have very little to do with medical and health care and more to do with healthy lifestyle behaviors. Mm-hmm. And the approach that Healthy Monadnock has taken is to look at, how do we create environments that make it easier for people to live healthy? So since they've been recording data around physical activity back in the 50s, only about 25% of the population has ever participated in structured physical activity. So joining a gym, mm-hmm. doing dance classes, that sort of thing. According to the Surgeon General of our government, we need 150 minutes of moderate to rigorous physical activity every week. And if only 25% of us are doing structured physical activity, how do the rest of us, incorporate the active living in a way that at least starts to get us towards that recommendation from the Surgeon General and the CDC. And so walking is probably the easiest way for people to get physical activity, for that 75% to get physical activity. But we know that there's some barriers to people walking. You know, if it's not safe out there, if you don't have, you know, good sidewalks and crosswalks and signage and the street, the trees and the landscaping, you know, then people are less likely to walk and bike. You know, and this is not Healthy Monadnock's big idea. You know, this is really coming from the smartest people in our country and throughout the world, saying that, you know, yes, we went down this path of creating our infrastructure for vehicles, for cars, for buses, for, you know, that kind of transportation. But if we're really going to increase active living in any community across the country, then we need to make it safe for people to walk and bike, because that's really where we potentially can get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of supporting people to be physically active.
You know, it's an interesting area when you think about it, because I travel up Route 10 into Keene, and you know, there has to be some challenges infrastructure-wise to creating these safe pathways. I've seen some tremendous changes in terms of, you know, bike lanes and safe crosswalks when we're sort of in the either Keene City or even in some of the towns, outlying towns, but some of those rural stretches in between. How are we really addressing that, Mary?
Well, one thing to consider whenever you're looking at a roadway is the context that it's in. So not only the function of the road, but what's the surrounding land use.
Right.
So if you're in a rural area, chances are it's not a lot of heavy pedestrian activity. There might be some bicyclists, you know. So what a lot of people recommend for a rural road is to have a paved shoulder, and that alone can be enough. I mean, you can look at, you know, Swansea Route 32, there's no shoulder. So if you're riding your bike down that road, you're in the lane with the cars, and that doesn't feel safe. You know, maybe somebody who's, you know, a bicyclist and wearing their spandex will feel comfortable doing that. But, you know, like a high school student might not feel comfortable riding their bike to school down that road.
Yeah.
So having a paved shoulder can be enough in some situations, and that could be considered a complete street.
And you know, it makes me, part of the reason I'm so aware of it is, as I came up Route 10 today, there was 3 young boys, and I thought, wow, that's great, they're on their bikes, they're riding to school. And then there was no shoulder, and this truck came along behind them, and I'm in the other lane, and I'm trying to get over as far as possible, because I'm thinking, boy, when that truck comes by, that's got to be scary for them. And I see a man walking every day with the Camel water pack on his back, all the way from Winchester into Keene. And I see him along the roadway again. You know, he's always trying to get way off the pathway into the woods. And even in the wintertime, he's out there walking, which is just fabulous. So I think there's some challenges. So how do people get really involved in, you know, sharing in the responsibility for this and being part of, whether it's building these safe routes for people or supporting the efforts that are going on?
I think there's a lot of ways that people can get involved, right? Specifically in what you're doing. I'll just sort of speak to generally what, you know, what we're hoping that people can do more of is, you know, first of all, you know, what is the safe, you know, are there safe places for you to walk in your community? How are you getting your physical activity, you know, now? If you're not getting it, if you're not in that place where you're able to really be physically active, can you look at your workplace? A lot of people come into Keene to work. We know our population swells in the city of Keene because it's a destination for work. What could be done at the work site level to create walking paths that you can, or walking routes, safe walking routes that people can take advantage of during a break or lunchtime or after work, before work, you know, those kind of things. And, you know, so if you're struggling with how do I get that physical activity, you know, consider walking, and then what do you need to do within your work site, your child's school, or within your community to be an advocate for making the streets safer. And Mary, you probably have some more specific ideas as well.
Well, if you live in Keene or close by, you can support, the City of Keene right now is working on a complete streets policy. And I believe right now it's in the Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. And they're taking a look at it, and they'll be sending it to City Council. But there's a couple of things coming up on Wednesday, today, or no, a couple days from now. There will be a hearing in the evening for the Marlborough Street Rezoning and Revisioning Initiative. So people can go to that and talk about, ways that we can improve that segment of roadway. And then on Saturday, September 19th, we're going to be demoing some of these infrastructure changes that I was talking about for one day. So just for 5 hours, actually, we're going to have protected bike lanes out on the road. We're going to add a couple of crosswalks. We're going to put in some landscaping, a little mini park called a parklet and a parking space. So we're doing quite a lot, actually, just for this day, and people can come out and experience what the roadway is like with these changes on it. And then hopefully provide feedback to the city that it was a good event, that some of these elements probably could be implemented permanently. So those are some immediate things that people can do to get involved.
And is that something people of all ages can really come out and experience on Saturday?
Yeah, it's really, it's a family-friendly thing. We have food trucks coming out. There's going to be Elliot's Place and Charlie's Old Time Creamery. There's going to be a little mini putt-putt golf course made by Monadnock Makerspace. There's going to be yoga out on the grassy area between the Savings Bank of Walpole and the road. There will be acoustic music. There will be some fun things to do and things to try out. We had a similar event in Swansea on August 29th during the Whitcomb Hall Committee's annual chicken barbecue. It was a much smaller event, but it was very successful. We had, we created this little parklet that went out into the roadway. It was like we rolled out sod on the ground and put up street trees and all these different landscaping and some fun, furniture, and there were kids playing on it, and people really loved it. And so that was just it's a chance for people to experience what the roadway could look like and get people thinking like, oh, this doesn't have to just be a stretch of pavement that cars go down. Like, we could have on-street parking here, we could have a bike lane, we could have more landscaping and more crosswalks.
So if people want to know more about an event like that or want to become advocates, because you're really talking about advocacy and getting in at that policy level, which I know Healthy Monadnock is really helping support and drive much of that. But around this particular initiative, which makes such a difference in people's lives, how do they reach out to both of you to do that?
Well, I work for Southwest Region Planning Commission. You can call us at 357-0557. And you can also go to the Monadnock Alliance for Sustainable Transportation, or MAST, has a website at www.monadnocktma.org, and you can look up our programs there. So,
Right.
yeah.
And we're really just promoting helping to increase the awareness that active transportation is really the way to go in terms of help supporting people to increase their physical activity. So working with partners like Southwest Region Planning Commission and others, Pathways for Keene, the City of Keene. I mean, there's lots of folks out there now, Monadnock Conservancy, that are really focused on this active transportation, because not only does it support people to be physically active, it also can build social connection, which is so important to people's mental well-being. It can also increase people's appreciation for the outdoors and the natural environment. So there's a lot of wins that our community can get just from this one initiative to support people to walk and bike safely in their community.
And it's interesting, Linda, that you bring up the beauty of our environment here, because I know in a lot of the studies that have been done, and in fact some of them by Southwest, that that's one of the number one reasons people live here, that they want to be part of the Monadnock region because it's such a beautiful place to live and play and work. I don't want to downplay, though, the importance of your website and how you are an information carrier. So I know people can be directed there as well. I know you're supporting these, but part of that support is really communicating to the public what's available out there. So how would people access that website, Linda? And in what other ways can they get information and communications?
So we invite everybody out there to become a Healthy Monadnock champion. Individuals, schools, organizations. You know, we're working with schools to help them improve the school environment to make it easier for kids and staff of schools to eat healthy, move more, all of that. We're doing the same thing with our organizational champions, our worksite champions. How do we support them to create plans and implement projects and policies that support their employees? And you know, there's real benefits to having healthier, you know, employees, way beyond that it cuts down on, you know, or it improves the individual's quality of life. You know, it helps employers to reach their strategic goals. They have more productive, more present, you know, people, less absenteeism, all the different, you know. So you can go onto our website, www.healthymonadnock.org, and become a champion. Talk to your workplace or the school that your children attend and ask them if they are a champion for Healthy Monadnock, and if not, why. And you know, do some advocacy within those two arenas to get your worksite or your children's school to get on board. As an individual, you can become a champion as well, and you know, individual champions, we're supporting them to, you know, understand where are the advocacy opportunities. You know, active transportation is a big area. Healthy eating provides a lot. Some of the social determinants, we're working on developing what a living wage campaign might look like in our community. So there's lots of opportunities to advocate for the kinds of things that will really improve the health of our 100,000 people in the Monadnock region.
So opportunity to be champions, opportunity to be an advocate for some safe streets and pathways being built for people to move around on. What communities are you currently working in, and if a community really wanted to mobilize behind this, can you help them?
Yeah, well, currently, for this past year, we've been working with the City of Keene and the Town of Swansea on doing complete streets policies. We're also working with Marlborough Elementary School on doing safe routes to schools, as well as the Keene Elementary Schools on safe routes to schools. And we did a Rack It Up, like a bicycle rack program in Keene and Swansea. So those are the towns we've worked with so far, and we're definitely interested in working with more towns. So if anybody wants to contact us, we've already contacted Troy and Hinsdale about working with them. And I believe we've also talked to Winchester and Jaffrey. So there's definitely opportunities to work with us. Just contact the Southwest Region Planning Commission. We can start chatting.
I'm excited to hear that because several years ago I did a project down in Hinsdale, and the number one issue that was identified down there was that there was not pathways to the school, which happens to be the hub of that community for activity, parenting programs, after-school programs, pretty much the social hub. And people said that you just couldn't ride your bike there, you couldn't walk there safely. You were reliant on transportation, which was very limited, and in that limited access for both young people and adults to many of the programs that were offered. So a real opportunity here for communities to get involved. And you know, that's that can be anyone. I want to remind you, public, that it can be anyone. You don't have to be in a leadership position. If you have an interest in this type of thing, this is important to you as an individual, or your family, or your neighbor, or your community overall. You have an opportunity to get involved.
Definitely.
So, Linda, any thoughts you have that you want to share with people about, the complete streets and pathways and the importance of it, and where you hope it'll go in the future?
Yeah. Well, another exciting development nationally has been the U.S. Surgeon General has issued a call to action just last week called Step It Up, and it's a call for communities across the nation to create the infrastructure, like Mary was talking about, and the social supports to get people walking more. Again, that's 75% of the population that is not physically active. If physical activity is really a key driver of your health, how are we going to support people, to be more physically active? So we're really excited to be, just directly aligned with this national initiative, and there'll be a lot of supporting resources for communities to get more people involved and to really become advocates for the kind of changes that are going to support them. If you I used to live in Westmoreland, and there were no little pathways along the streets. I mean, I took my life in my hands going out,
Right.
and walking and running. I do live in Keene now, and I don't have to think as much anymore about how am I going to get my physical activity today. Like what class am I going to join at the Y? Not that I don't love the Y, I love the classes at the Y. But I can think less about carving out time in my day to be physically active, and really think about can I get my bike out and run an errand. The rail trail system is right near my house and is so accessible for most of Keene, and there's trails out there in outlying communities as well. How can I use the trail system to to do errands, to get to work, to connect with people downtown or wherever? And it's so much easier for me personally to think about doing that rather than I need an hour to go to the gym and do this and that, and I've got to have the right equipment, and I've got to have, all you need is a decent pair of,
Walking shoes.
walking shoes, and as long as the routes are safe, I can go anywhere and pretty much get any of my errands completed by walking or biking. So I really encourage everyone to just, get out there, and even if you're not gonna, even if you can't get too far, because you haven't taken on physical activity, how far could you go from your front door? Could you go 100 yards safely, 50 yards safely? Give it a try. See what, see how getting outside and seeing your world in a different way than hopping in the car or getting on the bus, or see what other benefits that has for you. I know for me, it's just been not only the physical activity, but I see people out on the trails. We stop, we talk. It makes me feel better. So I think there's just a lot of benefits to it, and so I challenge people to just get out there and give a walk a try. Step it up, as the Surgeon General is saying, or step out and step it up.
So Mary, will there ever be an opportunity, or can either of you imagine all of our communities at some point being connected by bike paths or walking paths, or these, rail to trail paths? When you think about this area, we have a lot of rail that's come through here. We have a lot of logging roads that are out there. Can we ever imagine, you think, in the future, seeing all of this connected?
I think it's a possibility for sure, and I would love to see more of the rail trails get improved farther out from. I know Keene and Swansea have done some improvements to the rail trails. I believe there are some other towns as well, but getting those all so that they're accessible by everyone, I think that would be great. Be able to just ride your bike to any town in the region. That would be awesome.
Or walk your dog, or, and I think about we have an aging population now, and really having that social connection piece, when you really think of that, having places where people can walk and sit maybe as they're walking. I had a chance to visit a great rail trail down between Newburyport and another location, and they actually had a whole historical piece built into it that was just so neat to see on the history of the rail. And what it had served all through there, and you could walk along and see all of that, and they had beautiful plantings, and they were just fabulous. So I think people, just like you're saying, Linda, really getting out, trying to get out on these trails. If you don't know where they are, then they can call. You can call, whether it's Southwest Region Planning or Healthy Monadnock. Do you have them listed on your sites at all, on your websites?
We don't have the trails per se listed, but the City of Keene has a trail map that anybody can have access to through their website. We also have the link to that map on the Healthy Monadnock website. I don't know about a regional map of trails. Are you familiar with?
I believe that the Monadnock Alliance for Sustainable Transportation has discussed that. I'm not sure if it's ever been brought to fruition. I think probably the closest thing is the map that Pathways for Keene and the City of Keene sort of work on together. It includes trails that go outside of Keene, I believe, doesn't it? Maybe.
It shows where they start to go, but it doesn't go too much outside of Keene,
Yeah, so there is a very nice map for Keene.
So, something maybe that'll happen in the future, we don't know, but that's also about people getting involved. And people, using those pathways, making the request for what they need to make those pathways great places to be, and really accessible and able to be utilized. I know one of the things that's happened is there is some locations where people who may be a little bit physically challenged can actually get out as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
About, what's the...
Like people that are physically challenged so that they still can get out and use the pathways.
Well, I know all of the multi-use trails within the center, the urban sort of compact area of Keene, they're handicap accessible. So they're paved and should be accessible by wheelchair or whatever mobility device that you have. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But that's actually a really good point, a huge aim of Complete Streets and the Safe Streets movement. A big part of it is equity as well. I mean, there are people living all over our region who can't, drive themselves. You talked about an aging population. Well, the number of people age 65 and older is expected to double in our region. And statistically, nationwide, 1 out of 5 people age 65 and over can't drive. So how do they get around? How do they get to their social activities? How do they get to their doctor's appointments? We have some great volunteer driver organizations in our region, but they're already, desperate for volunteers and funding and all of that. And so it's making it easy for people to get out and be independent as they get into their older years. And also there's the economic equity issue. Some people can't afford cars. They're very, very expensive, especially in New England with our higher energy prices and a lot of wear and tear on cars. And so lower income families might not be able to afford a car, or maybe if they have a larger family, having 2 cars for everyone to get around. So for them, it's an issue. It's a transportation, I need to get to the grocery store, I need to get to school, I need to get to work. Having systems, infrastructure in place that makes it safe for them to do that is important. Great. I think that's another side of this, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's an important side of it because, as you're saying, making it accessible to everyone. I am curious, because I actually don't know this, and I am curious whether you have groups that actually utilize some of the trails that you're aware of? You know, walking groups that people can join, or perhaps seniors are doing something with the trails.
There is the Cheshire Walkers group, which is a senior group that, oh gosh, they've been coming together for quite a number of years now to organize walks throughout the Monadnock region. I don't know how many people are involved in that right now, but it's a very active group, and you can go on to the Cheshire Medical Center website, because the program comes through the Community Health Department of Cheshire Medical Center. It's called Cheshire Walkers for seniors 65 and older. But I think that, you know, what you're sort of bringing forward is, you know, that the idea that that to have a buddy or to have a group, a peer group, you know, or some kind of group that supports you in getting out there, and then provides that, you know, social connection. That's really part of this whole, you know, movement towards safer streets as well, because I think it's still not fun to just get out there and walk by yourself. You know, I certainly have a lot better time when, you know, someone's with me, or I know that I'm going to meet someone somewhere, or I'm going to see people along the way, that, you know, sort of a planned thing. So I think it is really important for us as a community to think about, how do we create those groups? Is it at the neighborhood level? You know, is it, you know, how do we do that? Because I don't think we're doing that in a real intentional way yet as a community. We're starting to think about it at Healthy Monadnock, you know. How do you provide that social support? It's just, how do you, you know, approach it in this rural community? You know, maybe it's by neighborhood, maybe, you know, but anybody that has ideas for that, you know.
There's the Monadnock Cycling Club too. If you're interested in biking, they have, you know, different levels. So if you're just a beginner biker, I've actually considered doing this myself, because I'm a little nervous to be riding my bike on highways and everything. But they have a Facebook group, and and it's organized very informally, and you can just, I believe it's A through D they use letters. So if you're on the A group, you're a really experienced bicyclist, and then D is for people who want a more casual, probably easier, safer ride. And so that's sort of informal, but it's, you know, if you're interested in bicycling around, that would be a good way. Yeah.
You know, again, we have this incredible resource here in the Monadnock region. And really, I think what you're talking about, Linda, just becomes so important, because we can have that resource there. But people really thinking about, how do we use that? How do I connect with other people to really get out there and be active? How do I build that excitement into my life? You know, you talked about, you've just made it part of your life. You haven't made it that extra thing you have to do. So we are getting close here to the end of the show. I want to see if there's any final thoughts that either of you want to share with the community.
All right. Well, I'd like to plug the event I talked about earlier.
Yes.
So we're organizing an event called Rethink Marlborough Street. It's going to be Saturday, September 19th, so coming up really fast. And it'll be a great time. And it's also a way for people to come out and see, you know, what a protected bike lane might look like, and see what it feels like. We'll have bicycles there that you can check out for free, so you can try it out, even if you don't have a bike or you didn't want to bring one. There's going to be a little bike repair station, so if your bike needs a tune-up, you can get that for free. There'll be a bike art exhibition, so, you know, decorate your bike and bring it. It's not all about biking, I'm just mentioning all bike things.
But people can come walk,
yeah,
they can come run,
walk,
they can come with their bikes. What about skateboards?
Skateboards are welcome.
Okay.
Yes.
And what time will that be happening, Mary?
It's from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's on Marlborough Street, right in front of where the Savings Bank of Walpole is. So just on that little, it's a pretty small block, but there will be a lot going on. One other thing I do want to say is that if you are going to the farmers market that Saturday, you can hop the City Express bus. They'll be running a special route just that day, just a 15-minute loop between the farmers market and the event.
Great.
So you can even hop the bus to get there.
Great.
Yeah.
So great event on September 19th, starting at 11 a.m. on Marlborough Street, right by Savings Bank of Walpole.
Yep.
And that's all free.
Yes.
And people get a chance to get out, have some fun, and walk, run, bike, skateboard. I'm trying to think what else you can do, but
Sit in little parks and
unicycle
eat food,
and
truck food.
yeah, it sounds like a great day, and let's hope the weather is really, really super. Linda, last thoughts from you?
So I would, put out a call to action to every member of the Monadnock region to think about one small step you could make towards becoming more active in terms of walking, especially for that 75% of us that is not part of the structured physical activity world. What's one thing that you can do? And certainly Mary's given us a great idea. Show up at that event. Check it out. Is there another small step? Can you walk out your door today and go 50 yards from your house and back and see what that feels like and see what you see? Could you call a friend today to say, walk that 50 yards with me and let's just see what happens? Be open to taking one small step towards improving your health through this idea of walking.
And it could be as simple as walking out to your mailbox. It's so funny because I see so many people drive up to their mailbox to pick up their mail as they're coming into their driveways. And perhaps parking your car and just walking out to the mailbox. So, making it simple, starting those first steps and really getting out there and walking. I want to remind you, public, that you have an opportunity to volunteer and be an active part of this for the community that you live in. You can reach out to Mary, you can reach out to Linda, and both at Healthy Monadnock and at the Southwest Region Planning. So get involved, whether it's on a policy and advocacy level and wanting to see change in your community, or as Linda's saying, take it on personally, individually, as a family, and maybe with a group of friends, but to get out there, to maybe just go for a walk together and really enjoy our beautiful communities that we live in here in the Monadnock region. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you, Linda and Mary, for joining us. I want to remind you to give, to volunteer, to advocate. Live united.